Viewer discretion is advised. The following content may contain material that some viewers find disturbing or offensive. While we strive to create content that is informative and engaging, the topics discussed today touch upon sensitive subjects. We believe in open discussion and exploring complex themes, but we also understand that certain content can be challenging for some individuals. Your well-being is our priority. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, please feel free to click away. We encourage you to proceed with caution and take care of yourself. For those who choose to continue, thank you for joining us in this important conversation. We appreciate your viewership and encourage you to follow our channel for more thought-provoking content.
You're going to have this knife fight between J.D. Vance as the continuation of the economic populist parts of Trump's domestic policy agenda, and what the establishment wants, which is a foreign policy resume, because they want to continue destabilizing the Middle East. Top pollster Mark Mitchell here. Today, I'm breaking down the infighting Republican voters are going to face. The party is deeply divided between traditional conservatives and the new populist wing. This division is going to hurt them at the ballot box. On the other side, the Democratic Party is embracing a socialist future. This shift will define the next election.
He's lost his big coalition. Now, there are a lot. I mean, that's the most beautiful slide you could possibly put up because it really shows what's like happening. I think that's the Schofield Bible doing a lot of heavy lifting there, to be honest with you.
Right.
But, you know, everybody keeps seeing these Harry Enton clips where he's like, Donald Trump has the best approval he's ever had among MAGA. And it's like, yep, Donald Trump supporters are going to support Donald Trump when you ask them if they're a Donald Trump supporter, right? And so that doesn't really tell you anything. That tells you that, like, and I said this on Alex Jones, I think back in October of last year, is that the cult was going to get smaller but cultier. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing happen. I think all the crossover Democrats bounced, and then the independents bounced after Epstein, and then he had all the young people bounce when Donald Trump is out there like saying he wants to keep home prices high. And so bit by bit, I think it's been a death of 1,000 cuts. Now, is he the most hated president? No. I mean, depending on what you look at, he's got a 42, 43, 44% approval rating, which quite frankly is about where Joe Biden was for most of the latter half of his term. I mean, that's not great. But then the problem is that I don't think anybody has a really good idea about what's going to happen in the fall. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be a massive blue wave, although that could happen depending on all the exogenous shocks that are out there, like what happens in the market, what happens with Iran. But then at the same time, everybody's saying, well, it's going to be a pretty safe Republican House pickup. I don't think that's the case as well, because I think what you've seen is a trend of Republicans underperforming the polling ever since November 2024. And that's this complete betrayal feeling. That's the just loss of complete. This was a movement. There was exuberance here for what the Donald Trump administration was going to bring. And the second one, people realized, well, it's not going to bring that stuff. I think a lot of people bounced. We had a question maybe like 2 months ago, and it was, has Donald Trump kept his promises more or less than recent presidents? And 33% said more, 50% said less. So that's saying that a lot of people support him, even though they're acknowledging that he's not really delivering on what he said he would deliver. And the number among Republicans was, I think, only 60% as well. And a lot of the Republicans say that he's not better than his first term. Is it all of them? No. Is it a majority? No. But it's enough of them that when it comes time to turn these people out, they're just probably not going to be there to the same numbers. Now, the reason this presents a problem is because everybody's looking and saying, well, redistricting has given Republicans a 15 to 20 seat potential pickup. But this is all based on the 2024 election when Trump was on the ballot, when everybody was happy that Trump was on the ballot. Trump's not going to be on the ballot now. And I'm actually pretty fearful at what the Democrats are going to do in September and October. I think a lot of people aren't prepared the extent to which they are very well funded through Act Blue. And they have a lot of ammunition to go on. And they've actually been, in my opinion, really quiet over the last 12 months as Trump makes a ton of unforced errors. You know, the Democrats actually kind of look sane right now.
Real time, uncensored.
Elon Musk rebukes the media for smearing common sense views as far right. It's ridiculous to call wanting secure borders and sensible spending far right. That's just common sense.
But critics say it's radical. No, it's not. The media is just out of touch.
Even Obama called for ending illegal immigration in 2000. It works.
The basically shifting landscape of politics. A couple videos came out that highlight this beautifully over the weekend. The first is an interview with Elon Musk, who once again shows why he is, whether you like it or not, the only like champion of humanity out here saying this type of stuff. And I know people have all sorts of suspicions about Elon Musk. I'm also, not entirely happy with everything, but man, at least he says stuff like this. At least he opened up X. We cannot be thankful enough, I think, for the things that he's done and the way that he has shifted the political landscape himself so dramatically. But here he is on an interview describing how normal people think. Let's watch.
What the normal people?
Okay.
What do you call the far right? Falsely.
You think is the normal person? Okay.
Yes. Literally, you could go back 10 or 15 years, and these policies were completely normal. In fact, one of the tricks that I think is funny. One thing that's quite funny is to like take a speech from Obama and Hillary, and then go to someone and say, who's sort of on the sort of what I call the lunatic left, and say, what do you think of the speech by Trump? I'm like, oh wow, he's the worst person ever. Actually, that was a speech by Obama, or actually, that was a speech by Hillary.
I agree. No, I agree that the center of gravity in this country has shifted. Certainly, in the Democratic Party, shifted to the left. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people like Rupert Lowe. I'm talking
right,
about
please.
people.
It's actually just normal people. It's just normal people. It's just normal people. And and here are the principles. And tell me which of these sound terrible. That we should have secure borders. That we should have safe cities. That we should have sensible spending. Which of those three are far right fringe? And I would like to just admonish you and the media for the absurd characterization of the far right. It is false and misleading and nonsense. Please keep this part in.
We'll keep all of this in.
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, round of applause. I love that. She keeps trying to interject. He's just like, oh, hold on. Hold on. I'm not done destroying you and your entire worldview. She's, what about? She knows what he's saying is true. She's lying. And let's illustrate this. Let's actually show a video from about 15 years ago. Let's show Barack Obama what he believed, what he pretended to believe, what he expressed while running for president the first time around. Here's Barack Obama expressing dangerous, far-right, white supremacist, xenophobic, just terrible stuff. Barack Obama, radical right-winger. Let's watch.
This administration, the Bush administration, has done nothing to control the problem that we have. We've had 5 million undocumented workers come over the borders since George Bush took office. It has become an extraordinary problem, and the reason the American people are concerned is because they are seeing their own economic position slip away. And oftentimes, employers are exploiting these undocumented workers. They're not paying the minimum wage. They're not observing worker safety laws. As president, I will make sure that we finally have the kind of border security that we need. That's step number one. Step number two is to take on employers. Right now, an employer has more of a chance of getting hit by lightning than be prosecuted for hiring an undocumented worker. That has to change. They have to be held accountable. Start shedding some light on the problem, and we can once again be a nation of laws and a nation of immigrants. That's what I intend to do as president of the United States.
Wow, I had no idea. Barack Obama hated brown people. I mean, you have to hate brown people to want basic border security, right? So do they just not understand this anymore? How do you go from understanding the effects of illegal immigration depressing American wages to not understanding? How do people get stupider as time goes on? They're all just pretending, folks. You keep it tuned right here where we actually tell you the truth and what we actually believe, not just play all of these stupid games. So yes, Elon Musk absolutely knocking it out of the park, humiliating the left and pointing out everything we believe is normal. Actually, we're the normal ones.
I'm going to tell you something
Breaking.
right now.
Top international journalist reveals exclusive insider information on coming Iranian strikes. Iranian sources claim Iran is preparing to unleash a new class of missiles to be used in a never-before-seen attack on Israel. This unprecedented escalation could change the course of the conflict.
If they've got no radars, they've got no defense, why isn't it Trump's not going deeper into Iran? Why is it he's restricted himself to the south? Is it because they're afraid of Iran's radars? Are they afraid of Iran's defense missiles, which they are? This surface-to-surface missiles, the surface-to-air missiles. That's what they're afraid of. And so if you look at Trump's strikes over the first 13 days, what was it? It was striking on the coast of Iran because he's too afraid to move in deep. Why? Because of the radar systems. The missiles, you've seen them become extremely effective to the extent where Smotrich said, what? We're not going to join the war. We're going to leave the war for Iran and the United States of America, because it's quite clear that Iran's missiles are potent, are very strong. And actually, I was told this was about 7 to 10 days ago. I was told that they are planning major strikes. And the plan was to strike on Israel. The plan was that it was going to be new missiles that they've never, ever used before. But then what happened was, obviously, I knew about it, so I'm guessing Israel found out about it, and that's why they got cold shoulders, and they didn't join the war. Trump was meant to escalate the war. He got cold shoulders and didn't join the war. And in reality, the evidence is the opposite. The United States of America is running out of defense interceptor missiles. They're running out of munitions. I mentioned it earlier. Ted Postal, MIT professor from the United States of America, confirms their defense is only effective 1% to 2%, and they are running out. They have none left. This is why you've got a scenario where, and we're going to talk about Zelensky, but this is why you've got a scenario where there's trying to be a merger of the fronts. America is in trouble, and they want out, but Israel won't let them.
Wow. And that's the thing. Larry Johnson, CIA, 31 years, basically never wrong. Ted Postal, MIT professor, you name it. Just a number of other leading experts have just said there is no air defense. The air defense is a joke. Talking about ours, not the Iranians. Of course, the Iranians have destroyed 43 of our aircraft, I believe is the number so far in this conflict. That includes MQ-9 Reapers. That includes the KC-135s who got blown up as well. I mean, it's a complete horror show, and it's only expanding. I want to get into this now.
Breaking update, 150 days into the Iran war, Trump is stuck and in total panic mode. He says the U.S. is ready for strong military action as troops pour into the Middle East. Escalation is happening now, with deployments across the region. This could trigger a wider conflict at any moment. This is a disaster. Trump walked right into the trap. He is preparing ground troop invasion of Karg Island, and he wants to bomb so-called nuclear sites. This is supposedly to get Iran to come to the negotiation table, but that is not going to happen. Folks, I've convinced Trump to join Netanyahu's war. He's on board. We're going to make history. This is the alliance we needed. Total victory. I did it. We're in this together.
Do you want to fight? You better believe you got one. Now the U.S. Senate has a legislation in front of it to literally merge our military and intelligence with the Israelis, have them co-own all of our weapon systems, a literal foreign coup. We now have footage that was just released. Lindsey Graham, a couple days into this war, starting 150 days ago, saying that Trump loves to blow things up and that, he convinced Trump to go in. It was going to be a piece of cake. That's what they all told them. And now Trump, of course, for a month has been leaning towards ground troops going into Kurg Island. When I was flying out of Austin a few days ago at the Austin airport, all I saw, it was troops in plain clothes, but they had their patches and stuff on their backpacks, their big army bags, and most of them were ground troops. They were airborne troops, regular army, logistics people, you name it. And then when I made connecting flights, it was the same thing. Mobs of troops, huge groups of them. And I talked to a lot of them. They said, well, we're not going to get exactly where we're going, but a lot of them had patches on their backpacks. I guess people know where they're going. And it was Israel, it was Jordan, it was Kuwait, it was Saudi Arabia, but mainly Jordan. A lot of them did say, yeah, I'm going to Jordan. Some would say, oh, I can't tell you where I'm going. So there you go. And of course, it's in the news. There's a massive surge to the Middle East, and we can expect a ground invasion of at least Kurg Island. That'll be a pawn sacrifice. It's totally surrounded. They're in the Strait of Hormuz, and other islands are planning to go into. Kurg Island is outside of that. And then once all that kicks off, the troops will get attacked, and then we'll be told, well, we've got to be there because they're killing our troops, just like when troops got killed a few weeks ago by that missile attack in Jordan, ballistic missile attacks. We were then told that that's the reason we're there. We're also told we're there to open the Strait of Hormuz, but the Strait of Hormuz was open before this disastrous situation unfolded. So this is an incredible clip. I could play it 20 times in a row. This is Lindsey Graham. This just was released over the weekend. And there he is with the corporate media behind the scenes with him. And he's saying the best thing he ever did was convince Trump to go to war, and that Trump loves to, quote, blow things up. So here he is from the grave, and that ties in with more reports of ground troops. They're calling it the nuclear option. They're talking about using nukes, quote, tactical nukes, which then sets the precedent for the Russians and others to use nukes. Then we have Mark Levin saying that Iran would be a fast war. And then we have Greg Bovino, former head of the Border Patrol, saying, yes, the Israelis have indeed trained the Border Patrol. Now, that's no secret. There's been other groups trained them as well. But when you do have the Israelis doing this on top of merging with our military and intelligence and controlling so much of Congress through AIPAC, it really is the main national security threat. And I said that months ago, just a week or so before the Defense Intelligence Agency came out with its official warning report to the president, it's public. Details are classified, saying the number one intelligence threat of espionage is now Israel, not Communist China. And it had been Communist China previously. All people that absolutely obsess over Israel, and again, if there's a thunderstorm, they think Israel did it, or if somebody falls on a banana peel, they think it's Israel. And that's discrediting. There's plenty of bad stuff Israel does. We should talk about it and not make stuff up. They would get mad. I talk about Communist China. Communist China is in the main AI race with us. They have 90+% of the rare earth minerals. They've bought off a lot of Congress, particularly the Democrats, but also Mitch McConnell and his wife are known CHICOM agents. That is a well-established fact. And China's still there, still causing major problems, but Israel's making a true run on controlling not just foreign policy, but the domestic policy of the United States, having legislation passed by 38 states that if you criticize Israel in any way, you cannot have any state contract to build a highway, to paint a school gymnasium, to carry out the trash. I mean, anything. This is social credit score, and again, completely unconstitutional. I'm not going to spend the whole day on Israel today. We're going to have Mark Mitchell on, the top pollster. Now we learned censored by Rasmussen, by Republican groups when he was warning Trump last year at the White House that his new actions not being focused on America first were so disastrous. And so he basically got shut down there. So he left Rasmussen. He'll be unfiltered next hour with Harrison Smith and myself breaking it all down. We're also going to get into Mondami and his fake campaign promises and how the Democrat socialists plan to take over the country and all of the different, well, we can't do all of them, but some of the different Islamic attacks in different parts of the world, mainly Europe, in Paris and in Germany and many other places. And we have the media trying to cover up that it's Muslims running over people at gay pride events screaming Allah Akbar, and that it's Muslims stabbing men, women, and children screaming Allah Akbar. But so many times people have cameras on the ground when it happens, so they're able to show who did it. Then the police come and harass and many times arrest those that expose who has launched the attack. So that is all coming up as well today. All right, now let's go to Lindsey Graham, and then we're going to dovetail that with just back-to-back, clip 6, 78, and 68. And so here is the nightmare situation. The headline's basically the same from Drudge, the Washington Post, to the Wall Street Journal. Trump is stuck. The White House admits he wants out. He wants Iran to make a deal. But after another 2 weeks of total pounding of Iran, Iran says, screw you, we're not at the negotiating table. We have closed the Strait of Hormuz. They officially have announced that they own it and control it and are ready for full war, begging the U.S. to send in ground troops. And again, Trump wants to do this, but he knows Americans are against it. So sending troops into a few of the islands like Kirk Island will be the camel's nose on the tent flap, just like Ukraine. So this is a terrible turn of events. The good news is everybody from Bill O'Reilly to Glenn Beck to Laura Ingraham to you name it are telling Trump he needs to end this war. He needs to get the military out of there. He needs to not get deeper into this huge mistake that he made. So here is this disgusting clip of Lindsey Graham, and then we'll go to the other clips.
Virtually everything they have has been knocked out now. Their missile count is going way down. No. Amazingly, they're hitting countries that
Look what we've done here. I know. I almost cried.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how long have we been pushing this?
Well, I mean, you've been pushing this for years, right?
Right. It's here. I talked to Trump this morning.
It's literally...
Oh, he's jacked.
Yeah.
It's the best thing I've ever done. He loves blowing stuff up. So, you know, there are a lot of people inside didn't want to do it. So I've had my challenges. But President Trump, when he gets into the zone, he listens, he asks good questions, you know, no tweeting. He has done he hadn't tweeted much at all, no drama. He's been a great wartime president. I said last night that Trump and Bibi are like Roosevelt and Churchill. I mean, they're the right two guys to confront this evil.
The Iranians have been at war with us for over 4 decades. But if we wanted to go to war, we know how to go to war. George W. Bush showed us. You send 400,000 troops in, and you defeat Iraq in about 43 minutes. We can do the same with Iran. Maybe it'd take 54 minutes.
So 54 minutes, he said they would fall. Now, I'm going from memory. Are we 150 days in yet? Or maybe we put that on screen. How many days are we? How many days are we in now here? Into the trap with that Israel now says is the perfect situation. Yep, got us stuck in there, got us in there as their proxy, just like NATO uses Ukraine as a proxy against Russia. Isn't that just great? And if we don't like it, we're 149 days to change in, well, then they'll just primary anybody with AIPAC with foreign money, total open foreign election meddling, and control everything we heard about Russia. You notice the Israel First lobby claims, I'm a Russian, I'm an Iranian, I'm also an Easter Bunny and a Chinese jet pilot from Mars. And that's what we're supposed to put up with. But it's a total integration, a total training to basically turn America into an apartheid-type state with the elites versus the people using racial division like they do in prisons to control everybody. Here's Greg Bovino talking about the Israelis training the internal police force that we now have that is Homeland Security. Here it is.
Israel, like, you know, the nation over there has a lot of influence on the Israeli government, has a lot of influence on our politicians over here, I think, is what he was kind of getting at.
I see. Yeah. And you know, I'm not a politician, so I don't know. And, you know, it's the only dealings I ever had with the Israelis is when I was a young agent with Border Patrol Tactical Unit. They sent me to a VIP security school, and it was ran by the Israelis. And let me tell you
so
what.
IDF actually does work with Border Patrol and ICE, because I've always heard that.
Well, it was that school's for all law enforcement. It was they put it on. It was Israeli. They contracted with Israeli instructors. They had a lot of experience, and they were really good. I'll hands off some of the best training I've ever had. They did not F around. So that was back, 2000, 2001. But I understand what people are saying. Yeah. Perhaps there is an outsized influence by Israel. I've never really been up against that, but then again, I'm not a politician. Israel wouldn't, influence me, the Mossad or whatever, however they do that. I'd like to know what is the influence? How do they do that?
Well, let's talk about that. For 50 years, the ADL has trained police, and it's gotten more intense. They give awards out to police chiefs and other police. And all of that stuff we saw under Bill Clinton and Obama to train to take on the constitutional terrorists, all those newscasts we played, all the secret documents law enforcement military gave us that were concerned, talked about the fact the ADL got in trouble back in the 90s, breaking into police department intelligence files. They don't have to do that now because they do most of the training politically for the police around the country. That's the fact. Trump early on in his administration said they were going to stop that because they found the ADL was lying about Trump. But when they backed off that, now they're back more than ever. And then you have the clergy response teams under InfraGard, and the FBI started after 2001. And it wasn't training to look for Muslims doing terror attacks. It was for training clergy response teams during crises like gun confiscation. I have ABC News reporting that. It's in my films. You just type in Katrina, clergy response teams, gun confiscation. You'll see the preachers. And in fact, Rob Dew, it's in Police State 4. So Rob, after the live show today, we're sending it to Wilson to add it to this report from the live show. We put a clip out. Let's put the clergy response team clip in right here from, I think it was Police State 4, ABC News, about the preachers are there when they have to confiscate the guns with the nationwide martial law, fighting the constitutional terrorist patriots. That when they have to kill and shoot Americans, that the preachers will tell everybody it is of the Lord. Romans 13, render unto Caesar things that are Caesar's, and those to God that are God's. And of course, it's totally taken out of context and twisted. It was Hitler's favorite Bible quote, was Romans 13. And they say under Romans 13, they're preparing to kill you and take your guns. And they go to a person's house, we'll turn them in, and they kill them. And that's, and let's put let's a couple newscasts. Let's just put those newscasts in here. Because people tend to think I'm making this stuff up. It's so crazy. Yeah, there's the old ADL spy ring stuff they got in trouble for. So that's really what's going on here.
This is a test of the emergency alert system.
Let's go ahead and play the clergy response team clip. Now remember,
Before this became national news, we got the secret documents from pastors who've been recruited by FEMA. We posted the secret documents with FEMA phone numbers. Train your flocks to turn their guns in. Train your flocks to go to FEMA camps. Train your flocks to take forced inoculations. People didn't believe us, just like they didn't believe the MIAC report. Then, suddenly, local news began reporting it, but like it was a good thing. Now, listen, will martial law ever be a reality? And the preachers are there, being paid by the government, faith-based initiative, now continuing under Obama, to tell their flocks to do what they're told by the authorities, and the government's biggest threat is the American people. That's a quote. So this is specifically the pastors getting ready for us to go to FEMA camps. And there's thousands of pieces of evidence like this, and Glenn Beck's saying it doesn't exist. Here it is.
Law ever become a reality in America? Some fear any nuclear, biological, or chemical attack on U.S. territory might trigger just that. And as KSLA News 12 Jeff Farrell discovered, the clergy would help the government with potentially their biggest problem, us.
From my cold, dead hands.
Charlton Heston's famous declaration captures a truly American value, the overarching desire to protect our freedoms. But gun confiscation is exactly what happened during the state of emergency following Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. U.S. troops also arrived, something far easier to do even now thanks to last year's elimination of the 1878 Posse Comitatus Act. That forbid U.S. troops from policing on American soil. If martial law were enacted here at home, like depicted in the movie The Siege, easing public fears and quelling dissent would be critical. And that's exactly what the Clergy Response Team, as it's called, helped accomplish in New Orleans.
Jeff, the primary thing that we say to anybody is let's cooperate and get this thing over with, and then we'll settle the differences once the crisis is over.
Such clergy response teams would walk a tightrope between the needs of the government versus the wishes of the public.
In a lot of cases, these clergy would already be known in the neighborhoods in which they're helping to defuse that situation.
For the clergy, one of the biggest tools that they will have in helping calm the public down or obey the law is the Bible itself, specifically Romans 13.
Because the government is established by the Lord, you know, and that's what we believe in the Christian faith. That's what's stated in the Scripture.
Civil rights advocates believe the amount of public cooperation may depend largely on how long they expect a suspension of their rights might last.
Today in New Orleans, they got a lot tougher on the holdouts.
Police department, anyone home?
Not only the flooded areas, but New Orleans' driest and wealthiest neighborhoods, too.
Police department!
The police and National Guard going street by street, house to house.
We need to make sure, too, that whenever we knock on doors, people refuse to leave. We need to make note, call it in.
They say there are no orders to use force, just strong persuasion, sometimes entering open houses with guns drawn, and instructions to disarm anyone inside.
You say guns will be taken? No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
That happened today in this wealthy neighborhood where homeowners had armed themselves to protect their mansions. Residents were handcuffed on the ground. In the end, police took their weapons but let them stay in their homes.
They were a little bit threatened because our weapons were bigger than their weapons.
For many of the police and guard troops, it is an uncomfortable job to do this in an American city. This guard unit occupied a church, using it as a base camp. They had to leave a note because they could not get hold of the pastor to get permission.
It is surreal. Yeah, you never expect to do this in your own country.
Chris Montgomery says he'd rather be in Iraq than patrolling American neighborhoods.
Walking up and down these streets, you don't want to think about the stuff that you're going to have to do if somebody pops around the corner.
I mean, shoot in America.
Yeah.
So I could just go on for days with all this, okay? But they also had the preachers trained during the next lockdown to tell you it's of the Lord, stay in your home, take your shots. This is called brainwashing. And the ADL and Southern Poverty Law Center have been at the heart of the whole thing and at the heart of helping us get sued and attacked and infiltrated and all the other crap we've gone through with the CIA and DOJ. It's all come out in court. So remember, when you share AlexJonesLive.com, it is a revolutionary act. You are the Paul Revere's. There is a
The two largest systems fighting each other right now are the Chinese Communist Party and the Epstein-class Zionist faction. And they're in a death struggle. Must watch, share full interview.
The two largest systems fighting each other right now are the Chinese Communist Party and the Epstein-class Zionist faction, and they're in a death struggle. Must watch, share full interview.
Ukraine's long-range drone strike on an Iranian ship is a major escalation. This is part of a new world war, and I'm dropping bombshell intel. We are facing an imminent global famine crisis. Food supplies are collapsing, and we must act now. Share this truth. The stakes are existential.
Please do support us by going to thealexjonesstore.com. Making a purchase and keeping us on the air and in the fight, and of course getting the incredible guests that we get. I'm about to be joined by Michael Yon, but let me lay the table for you first. Set the table for you here of just the latest of what's happened over the weekend in the war in Iran. Iran's foreign minister has announced that Zelensky's drone strike on an Iranian vessel in the Caspian Sea will receive a response from Iran. Russia and the European Union have been notified. So yes, it looks like we are really getting into a world war here. Things are spiraling out of control as the Houthis as well get involved, despite Riyadh's claims that all Iraqi-launched drones were intercepted. Okay, so the Iraqi-based Iran-sponsored militias are also getting involved in this. So, I mean, we're really seeing across the board things heat up. Riyadh's claim that all Iraqi-launched drones were intercepted over eastern Saudi Arabia. Satellite imagery reportedly shows a large plume of smoke arising from the Aramco oil processing facility at Al-Qaik. I think that's how you pronounce it. Abqaiq? I'm not sure. But obviously this is basically they're just taking huge portions of the global energy supply offline, possibly permanently, but certainly at an increased clip. Satellite imagery backs up reporting of damage at Aramco's key crude oil processing plant. And you see actually the satellite imagery, there's just this giant smear of black smoke still can be seen to this day. This was earlier today, this was posted. It's a critical node in Saudi's oil industry, processing a huge portion of the country's crude before it's shipped for export. Basically, this was one of the ways they were trying to get around the Strait of Hormuz. That has basically been eliminated. Trump shelves Iran strike over U.S. missile shortage. That's a story from AlexJonesLive.com. Reported in a bunch of different ways by a bunch of sources. Top U.S. military commander in Middle East advised halting Hormuz bombing. That, again, because of a critical shortage of stockpiles. Trump holds off major escalation as advisors raise concerns. U.S.-Iran war pauses for second straight day. Trump has canceled plans to sharply escalate the war in Iran over concerns that Iranian attacks could dangerously drain the Pentagon's already diminished stockpile of Patriot anti-missile interceptors and other air defense munitions in the Middle East is close to zero, per the New York Times. They're basically retreating into Jordan and sort of bringing all of the material we have across the whole Middle East right into Jordan and Israel, sort of consolidating. That could have good and bad strategic consequences. Israel expected Trump to bomb Iran last night, but then he let Tehran off the hook. We'll get into that. So, I mean, a lot of the same stories. Of course, Matt Bracken reporting on this as well. Saudi-led coalition just pounded Houthi targets. Oil tanker explodes after hitting naval mine in the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, things, long story short, things are nowhere near over. There only seem to be increasing and expanding and growing, and now we are combining the Ukraine and Iranian conflict. As Michael Yon has taught us before, all conflicts come down to, let me see if I get this right, resources, routes, and religion. Did I get it? Are those the 3 R's? Michael, I think I do. So we're going to break down how exactly this is going to progress moving forward. They're also talking about doing computer simulations to determine whether the U.S. could invoke the draft. I mean, things are really getting off the rails here. Michael Yon hopefully can help us make sense of it. You can follow him on X at Michael_Yon. That's Y-O-N. MichaelYon.com, MichaelYon.locals.com as well. Once again, thank you for coming on. Welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, thanks, Harrison. But don't use locals, please. We're trying to get off of locals, and it's actually difficult to do. Weirdly, I'm on Substack. Really? Anyway, I hate to diss locals like that, but I'd like to get off of your platform if you'll let us off. So anyway, it's a weird thing.
All right, so give us the Substack so I can correct it here.
Substack is my name, Michael Yon or Big Honey, Michael Yon, Y-O-N, Yankee Oscar November. There you go. And notice that post right there, Zionist forces may close Strait of Hormuz. That was July of 2025. And look, that's what's happened, right? Yep. And because, I mean, it's really obvious what they're doing. The war is not going to end, right? And when we talk about the combination of the Ukraine-Russia war with the Iran war, they were already, this is the same war. It's the exact same war. There is no separation, right? And that they might be shooting openly against each other now is a revelation to many people, but it's the exact same war. This war is not going to stop. This war was going on before any of us were born. This war was going on before the United States was born. This is a process war, and it's a war of process, basically. But you see some of the areas like Hormuz or Strait of Malacca or Panama. These are all part of the same structure right now. Some of the places like Panama, like Hormuz, like Malacca, these are standing wars. A standing war being like a standing wave, right? A standing wave that just is there, right? So there's always going to be fighting for the foreseeable future, and has been for the last at least 500 years, say for Panama, right? Now, there's been a century of relative peace when America was there in charge of the Panama Canal. However, we actually made Panama off of a piece of Colombia. We sponsored a rebellion November 3rd, 1903. We created Panama so we could make the Panama Canal. Routes and resources, right? Keep in mind, routes, resources, and ideology. Ideology is about human resources, and human resources are the number one resource on planet Earth. That's why so much effort goes into information war. Info wars. It goes. Yep. It's massive. With human resources, you can get all the other resources. You mentioned before on your previous, like about 15 minutes ago when you were talking, that basically America is being dumbed down. The world is being dumbed down. That's an attack on human resources. The United States is clearly being dumbed down. There's many books about it, and this has been going on since at least maybe the 1890s. But now it's in full force. I mean, it's quite big, and that's why. Anyway, not to go into this, but at the end of the day, human resources are the number one resource. The war that we're looking at now, or let's say the latest iteration of it, let's say inflection point, is so big that it's hard to miss, but it's been going on. The death jabs are part of the same thing that we see in Strait of Hormuz. It's the same exact war. These are just different weapons being employed and deployed in different ways, right? Yep. So anyway, Harrison, I'll go on for hours, and thanks for having me on. It's like 3 a.m. here, and I'm ready to roll.
Oh, well, we appreciate you making the time for us. And, of course, I had to request you on with all of these developments. And it's funny, I actually put a tweet out yesterday, I think, where I said, as I try to think back to, what actually started this conflict, now that Ukraine and Iran are actively shooting at each other, it's like, okay, you got to go, past Midnight Hammer, past October 7th, all the way to the Ukraine war. So now you got to go back to Maidan. If you're going back to Maidan, that sort of involves the whole Syrian uprising. You've got basically attempting to recreate all of the Middle East. You got Libya in there. It's like you go back and back and back and back. And I said, basically, we've been at the same war since 1913. You're taking it even further back, which I think is appropriate as well. But obviously, things have come to a head in a lot of ways. And the headline from Drudge today was stuck. The headline I think I wrote for, talking about Iran war, just said no way out. There's no way out. And actually everything we've done seems to have gotten worse. So just a few more headlines from the weekend. This again just shows you whether it's incompetence or deliberate destruction that the Trump administration is bringing to the world order. U.S. intelligence assesses that Iran's new supreme leader Khamenei is far more interested in a nuclear weapon. Of course, we knew this, but just to compile them all together, you've got, we wanted to stop the nuclear weapon. Well, now it's more likely than ever. The current level and type of U.S. strikes have likely failed to meaningfully affect the Iran regime's willingness to pursue and secure its strategic objectives with force, including long-term control of the Strait of Hormuz. So in other words, this key takeaway from the Institute of the Study of War is that everything we've done to try to belittle Iran's control of the region has, in fact, expanded and accelerated and grown their influence and control. Iran, meanwhile, rejects a U.S. ceasefire proposal that was delivered by the Iraqi prime minister. So obviously no way out there, no diplomatic way out with that agreement. Oil stocks, meanwhile, in the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve have fallen by 5.5 million to the lowest level since 1983. I think we only have a couple days left, in fact, of the oil reserve before it is completely empty. I mean, it just goes on and on. So we've got no stockpile of missiles. That was the big report from the New York Times earlier. You've got, I mean, just what are we doing here? I mean, long story short, what are we doing here? Michael Yon, and I think you can lay it out for us. If you see this with the perspective of the people in power are telling the truth, and we really are trying to stop this big enemy, Iran, nothing makes sense. If you instead perceive what's happening as a coordinated war against prosperity on earth, an attempt to consolidate resources in the hands of the very few and kill off the majority of everybody else, everything makes a lot more sense, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. I just got off the phone with Chris Martinson, by the way, whom you know, and just like hung up, and then you and I came on, and we were just talking privately. But, you know, and interestingly, Chris just told me that oil prices are down 6 to 7%. And he's like, this, you know, doesn't make sense, obviously. But actually, on the grand strategy level that I'm talking about, not only does it all make sense, I've been putting in writing like Strait of Hormuz to be closed by Zionists and blamed on Iran, right?
Yep.
And I said that in July of 2025. And many, many other things like that are coming true, like the screwworms in Texas, and Nord Stream would be blown up, Groningen would be closed, a long list. Because I do actually understand what they're doing. Because all I do, I'm usually up at this time of morning, by the way, in my library. This is my library. This is not a green screen. This is my a tiny part of my actual war library, which I get up and I'm at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and I'm studying year after year. And you can see eventually it becomes less complex and it becomes simpler, right? Yeah. At some point it becomes very simple. And that simple idea was what led me to, I think they'll close Strait of Hormuz. I think they'll close Malacca. They're going to go for the Turkish Strait, Bosphorus. They're going to Black Sea. They're going to go for Caspian. I got one old book here from the 1700s written by a British officer about the Caspian routes and all this stuff. Nothing has changed. You know, where's Kipling when you need him? You know, he came out with the book Kim in 1901. I sent something to on a group chat with Tucker and Mike Flynn this morning and Ann Vandersteel. It's a small chat about, you know, how, you know, in 1901, there you go. That's a Matt Bracken map, right? Yeah. If not, it looks like a Matt Bracken map. I call them Bracken maps. They're awesome. But you know, what Kipling said in 1901 in Kim, which I've got the original version right here downstairs, but he says, the war is so large that one sees but a small piece at a time. That's almost verbatim, right? And that's true of this. This is a huge war. When I was just flying back from Texas to Japan, I'm in Japan now, I just flew back. That's why I have bags under my eyes. And I finished a book on the flight that was actually recommended by Matt Bracken again. It was 9 Years with the Indians is the name of the book. And it's about, you know, a guy named Herman Lehman that was kidnapped in Texas. And a lot of this, it's a true story. Apparently, you know, the guy was 11 years old. He gets kidnapped by the Apaches, and he lives with the Apaches for a while. And then he lives with the Comanches later. But you can see how the Apaches and Comanches are fighting against white men coming in. They're great fighters. They're very intense people. But that's like fighting the white men coming in was like fighting a glacier with an ice pick. Right. You're just not going to win because it's literally a glacier moving in on you, right? And that the whole United States, our country, is a product of this process war. I mean, I'm deeply American, but now as I studied after many years and traveled the world quite a lot, looking at these things and running off to wars and that, eventually I realized my country is actually a product of a process war. I mean, my family came over in 1609 with the Virginia Company of London, right? And they got shipwrecked on Bermuda for 10 months. On the Sea Venture ship. There's a book about it called The Sea Venture, right? A lot of books about it. But in any case, I've got some of the original records from the Virginia Company of London, right? Yeah. So these companies, many of these companies were the ones that were making these colonies, right? Not just here, but not just in the United States, but also across Africa and South America. It's just normal. It's a normal process. Now and it's going to continue. That's why this war that's, you know, there's no new war. We're not in any new war right now. This is an old war. We're just at an inflection point that is very noticeable. We're at an inflection point where various oligarchical systems and corporate systems and ethnographical systems are all clashing each other in such sharp relief that it's obvious, right? So you're going to see, I think, global famines. I've been warning about that for 6 years now, since 2020. And I think it's more obvious that it's coming now. And some of the people that are trying to cause this, which would be the Zionist faction, I think they're going to try to put China into the two main, the largest systems that are fighting each other at the moment are the Chinese Communist Party and Zionist, right? I'm talking the Epstein class Zionists. Those are the two largest. They're not the only systems by far. There's many other systems, but those are the two big ones, and they're in a death struggle, right? I think you're going to end up seeing war between Argentina and Brazil after Argentina goes for Falklands. I haven't seen any of this in the news. I mean, I'm just saying this. I think Argentina is going to go for Falklands once they secure Falklands, which I think they will succeed at. I don't know when they'll do it because, they're going against the United Kingdom for the Falklands. The United Kingdom can't fight anymore. So I think they'll seize those. After they get the Falklands, I think that Argentina will go for Brazil. Why? It's really not about defeating Brazil. It's about diminishing China's food supply. Not that the people in Argentina might actually recognize that, and I think the people in Argentina, as they watch this, will be shocked at the idea that Argentina would even go to war with Brazil because it's not in their consciousness, right? We went down to Argentina looking at this about a year and a half ago. But, Argentina, there it is, Milei, right? His actual last name is Miliakovsky, right? Milei's last name is Miliakovsky, like Netanyahu, Miliakovsky. They're both Miliakovskys. And so, anyway, China and the Zionists are fighting over Argentina. They're fighting over Panama. They're going to be fighting over Strait of Malacca. They're going to be fighting over Thailand. Now, my Thai friends, keep in mind, I used to have an office in Thailand. I wrote the last 2 pages of one of the prime minister's books in Thailand. I'm pretty dialed into Thailand. In fact, I went with Al Johnson, a research partner of mine. We went to the Kra Isthmus in 2014, specifically looking at that as a place where they may build a canal. If you got a map, if you could pull it up where the Kra Isthmus is. But the Kra Isthmus would be a bypass from the Strait of Malacca, right? Right. I think you're going to see the Strait of Malacca get blocked. That will put China into more of a hurt, block a few other places, take control of Panama. The Zionists are working hard, using the United States, of course, to take Panama, and where I spend so much time. And they don't want China to have it, obviously. Start a war with Brazil. There's many ways to cut off China's food, right? China can't produce enough food. So China has certain advantages and disadvantages, and the Zionists have certain advantages and disadvantages. And obviously, they're both highly sophisticated groups and highly capable groups, and it's like Godzilla versus King Kong. And so now there's that. Then we've got the Russian systems. We got the Indian systems. Now, keep in mind, there's different sort of life forms here. You've got ethnographical sort of formations like the Indians. The Indians are going into China and, into Canada, which is like China now, some parts of it. Right. And you got the Chinese going through, or the Indians coming into Texas and all over the place. By the way, I spent about a year in India. I spent more than 20 years in Asia, where I'm at now. But the
Indians are sort of using like demographic overwhelming, right? They're just
I thought I felt a small earthquake. That's why I paused. Actually.
Oh shoot.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
No, the water's not moving much, so I keep water here just in case.
You invoked Godzilla and King Kong there in Japan. But I think what you're talking about is the Indians are basically, and they're saying it openly. They're going, hey, there's so many of us, we can just kind of demographically overwhelm everybody else. So they just offered 60 million people to Canada. Hey, do you want 60 million people? They'd really help you. Meanwhile, they're saying, hey, if we get a certain percentage, we then can dictate their electoral process. There's an Indian group of Indian immigrants in New Zealand who openly said this. They said, hey, we're 20% of your population. You do what we want, or, because we'll vote as a bloc one way or the other. So the Indians are using this demographic sort of overwhelming just the sheer numbers. Meanwhile, the Zionist groups, very small numbers, but very high positions. The Chinese are a whole different animal, but all these different animals that you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And they're all going to behave, and there are different vines that are creating, that are all competing for sunlight, right? Mm-hmm. And they're crawling all over each other. The Indians and the Chinese aren't going to get together, of course. And keep in mind, Indians are not really a block. You got like the Gujaratis and different groups, you know. You got there's so many different groups. And so it's not like Indians are one thing any more than Native Americans were, you know, all Cherokee or all Apache or all Comanche or Arapaho or whatever, right? It's the same thing with Chinese. Chinese are not an actual block any more than Europeans are. But they will tend to, you know, promote within. Like Jews will do that, of course. Zionists will do that, of course. Catholics will do that, of course. I mean, there's these different systems, and they'll behave in ways that are that will promote their own system, of course, and they're competing with each other. And it's never ending. It just doesn't end. That's why the idea that this war is going to end is actually ludicrous. It's like it's like silly, actually. In fact, the war it didn't begin in our lifetimes. It was already very mature. I mean, if you look at the U.S. Revolutionary War, was part of this war. The War of Jenkins' Ear was part of this war, like, obviously. The war of so many of these wars, the World War I, World War II, it is this war. There is no difference at all. It's actually the same war. So you've got various process wars, like Catholics trying to make the world Catholic, Protestants, the way I was raised, trying to make the world Protestant, Muslims of various sorts trying to make the world their sort of Muslim, right? Hindus doing the same thing, right? You've got Jews don't recruit anymore, but they used to. They do it in-house, right? And they may do it again, but because these things tend to change over time. You've got, you know, communists doing communist stuff. You know, but when you look at an ethnic background, Indians will promote Indians. Chinese will promote Chinese. That's just the way this goes.
Except, you know, the only people group I don't hear you mention is how about us? What about Americans or European people? It seems like all of our effort is going towards serving the Zionist causes, and we can get into, you know, what's going on in Argentina or Venezuela right now, obviously what's going on in Iran. And that's so interesting. You say that the foundation of America was a part of this, because why was Columbus, you know, sailing in the first place? To try to find an alternative route, because they didn't want to have to, you know, get to India by going around the Horn of Africa or by using the Suez Canal. So, I mean, you're right. And then you got the Northwest Passage, that, you know, inspiring a lot of colonization up north, thinking that they could find a way around. The Panama Canal obviously being cut to shorten that trip. So, I mean, we talk about roots and resources. It really does all fall into this this one paradigm. It's super interesting.
Oh, right. And once you recognize that, you're going to find a lot of these things are a lot easier to predict. That's why I mentioned earlier, once you get to a certain level, it becomes a lot less complicated and complex, right? It becomes much simpler, actually. At some point, it feels like cheating. You know, Alex. When did he do that? He did some program. I just watched it again yesterday. A friend sent it from Texas, actually, and it was Alex talking about how the British Empire and the Jews want to go after the Scots, right?
Of course,
because
the great game. Tell you what, stay there. We'll be right back. We got to go to a quick commercial break. More with Michael Yon on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
America is now 250 years old. July 4th isn't about delicious cheeseburgers and fireworks, though I love them so much. It's about, what does America stand for? The globalists cannot have our country survive. They want transhumanism. They want the Great Reset. They want the New World Order. That's why they demonize Americans. That's why they pay the NBA and the NFL to take a knee during the anthem and push all this communist Chinese garbage. Because what America stands for is antithetical to what they're doing. So, when you go to thealexshowstore.com, we have a whole summer line that just rolled out. We'll show you some of these designs. And most of them, I came up with the concepts. I'm pretty proud of it. I think this is a badass shirt. It's the Betsy Ross flag. And it says Rebel Scum since 1776. And the designs just get better from there. And they fund the Second American Revolution happening right now. Because our Revolutionary War never really ended. We're just one continued arc, the flower of the Renaissance, challenging totalitarians and authoritarian scum. Because in truth, they're the scum, we are the future, and we are winning. You wanted 1980 style wife beaters? We got a whole bunch of them with great slogans like less 1984, more 1776. Got another great shirt, make Orwell fiction again, and so much more at thealexshowstore.com. And I got to tell you, this fabric, how light it is, how good it feels. I asked the folks at Bigley, can we have some dress shirts? And I sent them an example. This is even better than the shirt I bought that was similar to it. This is awesome. This shirt is so light. It's so great in the summer. Get yours now, along with dozens of new designs and so much more at thealexshowstore.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. As we discuss the conflict of humankind, as we were leaving in the last commercial break there, we had to cut off Michael Yon, my guest. You can follow him on X at Michael_Yon, michaelyon.substack.com as well. Talk about the Scots. And, man, you go back, you can read the old Romans. They had problems with the inherent freedom of the Germanic people, so they sort of wiped them out. They took out the Gauls, and that worked for a little while, but they kept having problems with uprisings. Why? Because just off the northwest coast of France was this little island called Britain. It was this engine of Druidic subversion, and these Druids would go into the Gallic communities and create uprisings. So even though they didn't even want to, they'd already conquered all of the Gallic lands. They had to cross the channel and go into England to try to stop the source of this ever-churning engine of rebellion. They eventually got up to Scotland. They never made it into Scotland. You had Hadrian's Walls. Eventually, they just thought, let's just wall this place off. We'll deal with it with future generations. They never got around to it. But there's something about the character of the Scots, the character of the English, even the character of the Germanic people. There is this drive for sort of freedom. They don't want to be told what to do. They didn't comport themselves with the Roman sense of discipline, and it was always a problem. I think that's what you were working towards, Michael Yon, when you're talking about the Scottish character that Alex Jones brings up so often. It's a phenomenon throughout history. The Scots are so often at the head of rebellions. You can even find examples like in the Middle East. There'll be some Scottish guy leading a rebellion of a bunch of Arabs. It's just a part of their character. And, you might say, well, that's racist. Everybody's exactly the same. Well, the people in charge of our world don't think so. And they think that the European people, and especially the Scottish English people, are a very inconvenient group of people, a very large barrier to their total control. And that has a lot to do, I think, with the way things are unfolding, whether you're talking about immigration or the warfare going on. They're going after this spirit of resistance, spirit of individuality, spirit of rebellion that is always a persistent threat to their total control. They really want to eliminate that. Am I totally off the rails, Michael Yon, or is that generally the direction you were going?
That's exactly the direction I was going. And my culture is Scots-Irish. I mean, I feel that, it's just my culture, right? I mean, it's the way.
Same here.
We are. I don't want to be told what to do.
Right.
And you're going to get actually. The interesting thing is with Scots-Irish types is they will do stuff as a team and a unit, no problem whatsoever. But they don't want to be told that you must.
Exactly.
They want to be persuaded that we should, right?
They'll leave Tennessee, they'll go to Texas, they'll die in the Alamo, but nobody's going to tell them to do that. They're doing it on their own volition, damn it.
That's right, exactly. When I was in Special Forces, I trained for 3 years to parachute into Poland to fight Russians. And back then, I thought it was important. I would do it. Right now, I'd say you're a fool if you want me to put that parachute on, right? So, knowing what I know now, there's no chance I would do it. But back then, I was like, let's go, right?
Yeah.
And but it was clearly a kamikaze mission, actually. But like the kamikazes, the Japanese were similar insofar as they wanted to be left alone within their own ecosystem. But, I was just looking at your Twitter account when I was when you were on the break, or we were on the break, and it talks about the fragile the fragile peace phase or whatever, if I can read it here. But actually, there's no fragile peace talks. You know what I mean? This is total war. This is just more like, this is what peace talks are. Loading. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what they are, right? That's all this is. This is This is total war. And as the Japanese, or as the Chinese would call it, or as Mao would call it, it's tan tan ta ta, right? It's fight, fight, talk, talk, right? This is there is not going to be a peace treaty or something like that. There is no memorandum of understanding. That's popcorn for the pigeons. This is total war, right? This is and population reduction is underway. You can see it's taking it's been a long process to reduce the food supplies, to knock out, fertilizer supplies, release things like screwworms, and on and on and on. Blow up Nord Stream, close Groningen, so many different things. It took centuries to build this stuff up, and it's taking a while to knock out water infrastructure, to climate, obviously, weather manipulation, as Dane Wigington would point out often, is quite real. I mean, there's people that say weather manipulation is conspiracy theory, but they're not even on planet Earth if they think that's conspiracy theory. I mean, exactly what they can do and what their capabilities are, I don't know. And I say they, it's many different groups that have worked on this for, I just finished this book again, 9 years with the Indians that Matt Bracken recommended. But the Indians were doing, rain dances and stuff. Everybody's been trying to manipulate the weather forever. Right. And now our rain dances now work through different mechanisms. And so there's many components of this war. As you know, the biggest resource of all is human resources. The name of your program is InfoWars. Well, now it used to be InfoWars. It's Alex Jones now, right? What'd you rename the program to? Yeah, Alex Jones Live, the Alex Jones Network. But absolutely, it's an information war. It's about ideology. It's about, they wouldn't be able to get away with any of this stuff if people were aware of what their ultimate plans are, or aware of, they have to keep you, with these breadcrumbs, piece by piece go, oh, well, this is just about Iran nuclear weapons. So, that's really important. So they get your permission for that step, then they get your permission for the next step. But really, if you were to zoom out, if everybody were to realize what the actual intentions of this are, we would resist it, we would stop it. It wouldn't even be that difficult, but it's the information or the lack thereof that allows them to get away with all this stuff, which is another thing I tweeted out earlier this week, actually in response to our previous guest, Mark Mitchell, because he was talking about the $730 million that Israel has poured into, the American media landscape to try to boost their, favorability. But it's like they aren't trying to convince anybody. They just need this information out there to provide sort of the chum in the water, because they're doing whatever the hell they want anyway. They don't need your permission. They don't care if you want to go to war with Iran. They're going to war with Iran, and they're going to be in a war with Iran until they get what they want. Public opinion be damned, or rather public opinion be controlled and managed and fabricated. So, it's like once you understand and zoom out, you're right. I mean, it gets very simple all of a sudden. It's not all these, it's not this like, oh, well, we tried to do this, and then the diplomacy didn't work, and then this guy betrayed us. And no. Zoom out. These people want the war because they want the straight shutdown, because they want the collapse, because they want control. It's actually fairly simple when you follow it to the end of the line. If you keep that concealed, then you keep everybody in a, naivety and ignorance that allows you freedom of action. It's simple, and it is an information war at the end of the day. It is. And, again, human resources are the number one resource. And the control of humans has been a long, long game. Yeah. For instance, that book, 9 Years with the Indians, that Matt Bracken, again, recommended, that war talks about people, young children being kidnapped by the Apaches, and they were tortured for a while, and then they become part of the Apache tribe, right? I mean, like hardcore part of the tribe, and then fighting against white people, their own people, right? So, I mean, this is normal. Imagine how many children have been brought over the U.S. border by these same oligarchical systems. Where are these children now? Some, no doubt, are being made into assassins. This is an old game. There's nothing new about this. I mean, white people, again, like the missionaries, were then taking Indian children and brainwashing them into our way of doing things, right? Mm-hmm. So when we say it, when we're doing it, we don't call it brainwashing, of course, but when they do it, it's brainwashing. But The main thing is you're trying to imprint your way, your container, let's say, to fill the shape of the container that you're in, right? Mm-hmm. That you want us to be in. You and I were raised that way, but the human resources are the number one resource, and those are. People want to control those to control the world. And right now that includes depopulation. You see these people that are being used to invade Europe and the United States and here in Japan, those people are meant to kill us off, and then those people will be killed off, right? Yeah. They'll take their children and process them basically in the way that they want, imprint them with like a stamp of, and if you don't, it's interesting when the Apaches in this book, 9 Years with the Indians, when they kidnapped a couple of young children, they kept crying for 2 days. So the Apaches killed them. They killed those two children because they kept crying. They don't like people who cry, right? Yep. So they just, those puppies basically are not useful to our tribe. They, they're not strong enough, I'm guessing is what they thought. And this is almost certainly what's happening right now with a lot of the people that are being brought into Europe and the United States. They're just being fashioned into an army to kill us off.
Well, you're exactly right. And that's what, I've talked about this before, sort of the endless cycle of immigration where, yeah, they're going to bring people in from the third world. They maybe have they might be very strongly Muslim. They might be very conservative in like a Western sense, but give it a generation or two. The propaganda, the temptation of a sinful lifestyle is all around them. Their children are going to be less connected. Their grandchildren less so, even less so. Then you've got like the poisoning. They're going to be constantly hit with the microplastics and the atrazine and so after a couple generations, you're going to see the end of the line, and they're going to bring in a new crop of immigrants, and they're always going to keep the birth rates of the third world high. So you have this dysfunctional third world being kept alive with the surplus of the first world, bringing that population in, washing them, processing them, as you put it, right? That's exactly right. Processing them into, good little suicidal liberals for the West. They die out. I mean, it could be an endless cycle, literally, to where nobody ever has any sense of like community and permanence, and this is our land and we're a collective. This constant churning mass of humanity is really the weapon of diversity being wielded against us. But, in terms of direct like control of people, we have this story from yesterday. U.S. Army runs large-scale mobilization exercise to test wartime readiness. The U.S. Army is running a large-scale exercise designed to stress test how the country would recall soldiers and shift to wartime footing, a signal that Washington is treating near-peer conflict planning as real operational priority. And they're basically talking about what would happen if we did the draft. I mean, if we invoke the draft, what would happen? I would love to see the results of that simulation, because I imagine, they type it into, what if we, invoked the draft? Oh, we all die. Okay. What if we invoke the draft a different way? We still die, huh? I mean, I think if they were to actually try to invoke the draft, it would actually snap a lot of people out of it. A lot of people right now, they can go about their day and not really care about geopolitics. If they suddenly get a letter in the mail saying, your son or daughter is being called up to go to war somewhere, they're going to go, whoa, 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 who are we at war with? Why are we at war? Why is my child going to go do this? I don't think so. I think that would wake a lot of people up. But this is troubling. Why are they writing articles about mobilizing the American people and doing the draft? Germany's been talking about it. Britain's been talking about it. They're running ads talking about you should sign up for the army to fight for the European way of life that they're simultaneously destroying through immigration. And it's not consistent, it's not logical, but it's very menacing and ominous, the fact that they are talking about invoking the draft as part of what has obviously become a full-fledged World War III at this point. Your thoughts, Michael Yon, on the potentiality for a draft here in America?
Extremely high. I just spoke at the Red Pill conference with G. Edward Griffin because he invited me, and I spent a lot of, G. Edward Griffin is unbelievable. He's been on with y'all many times. And oh my gosh, I would like to spend like a month with him. Yep. I mean, and anyway, we talked about things like this, and I think the draft is almost a done deal, actually. I mean, because for multiple reasons, and I've been talking about this for a long time. I don't know, several years. That they'll end up being a draft. They'll use that to kill off a lot of people like us or our children. That sort of thing. But keep in mind, as a draft comes, who are they going to put in American uniforms? They'll put in like the Haitians and the Bangladeshis and that sort of thing that can be used to kill us. They don't even speak our language, that sort of thing.
True.
This is normal. Keep in mind, historically, this is normal. Listen, I was in special forces, right? Why does special forces even exist? Special forces existed to go raise foreign armies, right? Yep. Like Jesuit style, right? I mean, that's what they did, and that's what they do, right? And so, this, I look at it through a lens that maybe some people don't, but I mean, this is normal business, is to go somewhere and raise. Look, when I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, what did the U.S. forces and coalition forces spend most of their time doing? Raising the Afghan National Army or the Iraqi Army, right? The Iraqi police, the Afghan police. We were raising them up. This is normal. And so this is almost certainly what you're about to see in obvious relief in the United States. In other words, here's the draft, time to go to war. And people are like, well, I don't have to go to war because they're going to draft these illegal aliens. So okay, go ahead and go do it. And the next thing you know, your notice is in the mail. And here it is. If you don't show up for the draft, all your funding is cut. Your digital money that they'll end up having, you don't have any money. Your car doesn't work. Your electricity goes out. You can't go through the airport, or you'll be scarfed up and taken to a back room and thrown in a container and taken off to Fort Bragg or something, right? They'll kill you off. Look what's happening with the the Ukrainians.
Yep.
They're kidnapping those guys off the streets. They're going to end up doing this draft. I strongly think that they'll do this. Keep in mind, if you want to sound like Nostradamus of war prediction, just predict these things and you'll be right. The war will grow. The war will grow, and it will grow out of control like a wildfire. It'll last longer than people expect, and it ends up in places that most people didn't predict. But again, this is a process war. It's been going on for many centuries at least. This is our train stop and people are going to react to it the way that they react to it. If you make mistakes, you may die. This is big boy rules. If you screw up and take the jab, you're dead, right? This is no joke, right? It's the same with like landmines. You step, boom, you're dead, right? And it's the same right now. If you answer that draft, they're going to jab you up. You're going to be sent off to some war and you'll be killed, right? That's probably what will happen. This is not about defending the United States. We all know that. People watching this show in particular realize this is not about defending the United States. The United States is just seen as a big plot of land that somebody wants. Like the screwworms, again, in Texas now. The screwworms, that now they're telling people, ranchers in Texas, check all of your livestock, your cattle, your horses, everything else, every 48 hours. This is not about screwworms. This is about protein supply. This is about taking your land. This is about dividing the United States. All this cannabis and all this crap that people like Doper Joe, Rogan push and all this stuff, that's part of a larger war. This is a part of a major war. You go to Thailand, it's the same thing. China and the Zionists are clearly working to divide Thailand up. Thailand is very important. That's why I used to have an office there.
Let me ask you about that, because you mentioned that before, and I agree with you that the two major power blocks that we're dealing with are China and the Zionists. Are they even at odds? Because, we played a clip the week before I went on vacation, but we played it and I talked a lot about it. This Chinese professor, very high up in the Communist Party, is talking about how he gets things done in America. We have friends at the highest level. And he's very open. He's like, no, it's the Jewish Americans who are sort of on our side and help us get things done. I mean, are the Zionists and the Chinese at odds, or are they working together to sort of divide up the world right now?
Oh, they're frenemies. That's clear. I mean, obviously they're both hostile to us, right?
Right.
And openly hostile to us. And, USS Liberty and on and on and on and on, right? 9/11, yada, yada, right? So they're both openly hostile, and they actually play by similar rules. Their firmwares are quite similar in a lot of regard.
Right.
And so, but they're also frenemies. They will kill each other, right? So, but in the meantime, they're getting us out of the way as best they can. And a lot of Americans are going along with it for whatever reasons, weakness, cowardice. They just want to watch their stupid large screen. I was just in the airport when I left Las Vegas, where I spoke at Red Pill, came down to Texas, ended up in Alex's studio there, which I presume is where you're at now.
I wish I'd been here. I'm sorry I missed you.
Yeah, it was a great studio, by the way. So I was going through the airport there in Las Vegas, and I hear these guys screaming, hollering at the top of their lungs, like they're on fire or something. And there's a restaurant there at the terminal. You can hear them yelling down the terminal. They're just watching some sports game and going nuts, like completely insane at the bar at the airport. And I'm like, what is this? A bunch of children? I mean, seriously. Clowns, we're being invaded, guys. You know
Seriously.
what I'm saying? You're going your poly market or whatever that crap. You're betting on these stupid games, and we're being destroyed, right? are being dumbed down, right? And I mean, it's a bunch of children that are, you know, I go back to the United States sometimes and people are trying to talk to me about how much somebody got in a draft pick or how much money he's making and who the new coach is. I'm like, are you out of your mind? We're being destroyed. Turn that shit off, right? I mean, 100%. It's time to get deadly serious or you and your family will die. And I mean dead. It's not like you're just going to make less money. They're going to take your house. They're going to be shitting in your swimming pool. That's what this is. You know, I spent most of my life in these countries, right? I'm in Japan now. It's highly civilized. But I spent most of my life overseas, right? And a lot of that's in countries where these people are coming from. They will kill you. They will kill you for fun, for sport, right? They will burn down your house for fun, right? I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we have literally cannibals coming into the United States. We have literally people that will just kill you on the street just for fun, right? And the borders remain open. Orange Fungus is saying that the border is closed. I was at a speech in Dripping Springs, you know, when he did that speech 2 weeks ago or whatever, right? I'm watching it. Orange Fungus is talking about the border closed. The border's not closed. Newsflash. So many Americans keep telling me the border's closed. The border is not closed. Chinese are coming across San Diego as we speak. They're coming across night and day, as are people from Bangladesh and everywhere else. The border is wide open. There's not the tens of thousands that were coming through before, but they will again. All of that architecture, Catholic Charities, HIAS, UN, IOM, all the Lutheran services, all of that architecture is still in place. You go down to Darien Gap, you go down to Panama. They're all of the architecture is there in Panama. It's all there in Colombia. Nothing has changed. The invasions are ongoing. Chinese are growing dope in California and Oregon and Maine. Now, the dope heads will go, hey, it's about my freedom, man. Hey, your brain is dead if you think this is about your freedom. You know, if people that don't respect their own brains demand that we respect their thoughts. No, if you're watching Dope or Joe Rogan and you think that's a serious program because he's got great guests, guess what? No, that's an op meant to destroy us, right? I mean, it's a very big deal. This is huge. And this is it. You either get serious or you get dead. That's what we're down to.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And again, people think that we're like immune to this for some reason. Even the threat of communism is almost treated like this. Communist, nobody, that never works. It's like, no, we have to actually have boots on the ground. Like you have to actually confront this like the threat that it is. You can't just brush this off. If they get into office and they pass laws, I mean, they're talking about packing the Supreme Court. Why do you think they're talking about packing the Supreme Court? Because they want to do things that are unconstitutional. It's not that complicated. So how do we wake people up to this? Because people are just sleepwalking. And as cliche as it is, I had exactly the same experience in a airport. I was sort of spying around. I was looking around at what people were doing on their phones. Every single man I saw on his phone was looking at sports. Every single one. Every single person. Hockey, soccer, football. I was just like, not one person is reading the news. Not one person is looking at what's going on in the world around them. Every single one of them is looking at sports like, this is bad. This is really bad. They've got to wake up. How do we convince them of this? Because they have this belief that there's a universal morality that the whole world subscribes to. As you point out, look at India, look at China, look at literally everywhere except the West. They do not have the same moral compunctions that we do about killing innocent people or burning down churches. I mean, it's a different mindset. It is a dangerous infiltration of our culture, and people are blind to it. It's crazy. 1 minute left. Michael Yon, how do we wake people up in this information war in this final hour here?
No, you're right. And on looking at the phones, Masako, my wife, told me she pays attention to what people are looking at. And here in Japan, a lot of them are playing games. They play video games on the trains and whatnot. But I think it's very important to, basically shoulder surf. What are they looking at? In America, often it's sports or other ridiculousness. And here in Japan, they're playing games and nonsense, right? Like I got a haircut today. You see, it's nice and bald.
Beautiful.
And in the haircut place, there was, I don't know, probably 100 of those manga books. You know what I mean? There's not one serious book there. It's all this cartoon crap, right? And, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's all this distraction, basically fast food for your brain. And keep in mind, ants, acoustic neurotoxins, the so-called music, right? I call it ants, acoustic neurotoxin. Those things, when you mix those with actual intoxicants, you mix the music, so-called music, ants, with intoxicants. If you want to dumb people down, that's your WMD right there. You mix all this ridiculous music that I grew up loving this stuff, right? I grew up loving what turns out to be acoustic neurotoxins.
Turns out to be an
right?
attack. It turns out to be yet another attack on humanity itself. Michael Yon, incredibly powerful. Follow him on X at Michael_YON.
I'm going to tell you something.